So as I said, we're starting a new, I guess you could call this a new unit. There'll be a paper on just this book alone. The book, obviously, The Sirens of Titan, written in 1959. Just probably try to keep that in mind as you're reading it. This is before the moon landing. So when he makes some comments about space exploration or whatnot, maybe they're out of date. Maybe they're not, though. I tend to kind of agree with him on space travel, but I'm not a scientist, so maybe there are some scientifically minded people in here who know more about physics and space, and maybe you're some nerds in here that'll, come to the defense of, all these billionaires who are like shooting rockets up into the sky. I don't really see the point in any of that. I think it's a waste of money and resources, but I'm an idiot. I don't know anything about physics. I took 2 semesters of physics and barely passed. That was my science requirement, so what do I know? But I think Vonnegut kind of agrees with me. So we'll get into that. He kind of has this attitude about space travel that you get right at the very beginning of the book. But I read this when I was very young. I think I was like 16. I was maybe a sophomore in high school, and I've read it a few times since. And I gotta say, it's probably my favorite book from Vonnegut. Has anyone ever heard of this guy? Because he's actually, if you take some English professors, I know when I was going to SAC, you had to read Vonnegut. Like there was like 2 or 3 professors that they made you read. Slaughterhouse-Five is his more famous book. Have you heard of him before? Slaughterhouse-Five is probably, yeah. Have you read Slaughterhouse-Five? No. Do you know what the story is though? Well, this is interesting though, because Vonnegut seems to be obsessed with time. Okay, this is a theme that goes throughout a lot of his books. And Slaughterhouse-Five is famous. I think the main character in Slaughterhouse-Five, his name is Billy Pilgrim. And he's this man who has become unstuck in time. And so what that means is that he experiences his life out of order. And so one moment he'll be in World War II in the trenches when he was fighting, as an American soldier, and then all of a sudden he'll snap and he'll be like on his honeymoon night in his bed at the hotel with his wife, just got married. And then snap, he's on this planet where he gets kidnapped by aliens, and he's in a zoo where the aliens are watching him and this porn star that they also kidnapped so they could breed them on this other planet. And it's really, and he knows when he's gonna die, like he knows he'll be killed and assassinated, like on Earth, like in the year, whatever, and he can't do anything about it. Like he's like sort of like the victim of time. I hate to say victim, but he's at the mercy of fate kind of thing. That's a theme I think that runs throughout Vonnegut. And in a way, I think it's kind of tragic. I like the guy as a person. He died in the 90s, I think, or late 90s. And see him on interviews, he's a pretty charming guy, but I don't want to get too much into the guy's personal life. He apparently had a pretty rough relationship with his children, and his son had a bunch of issues, was in mental institutes here and there, and I remember seeing some interview with him in the 90s where Vonnegut was like, he was kind of relieved because he thought he was a horrible father. He's like, I thought I was a horrible father, but it turns out that I couldn't control it. My son has this mental condition. And like, this is when like during the 90s, like a lot of the antidepressants were getting really big and all these doctors were prescribing Xanax and Zoloft. And so, I don't know, I saw that interview, I always felt like this guy's just making excuse. You know what I mean? Like he was a lousy father, he failed, his son's like getting to therapy and he's like, oh, it's not my fault, it's just chemicals in the brain and a chemical imbalance and a lack of serotonin or dopamine or whatever the heck. So, I mean, I don't know, I think he takes this sort of fatalism a little too far. I use that word fatalism. It's I guess a philosophical term, but there's a sort of fatalism in Vonnegut. Anybody familiar with that term? What is fatalism? You might just guess what it means just by the way it sounds. Fatalism. What's fate? If something is just your fate, what does that mean?
Like your destiny?
Yeah. I guess that's another word for it. What is that? What's your destiny? What is that? What does that imply? Well, I guess, right? But if you talk about fate, I mean, the way a lot of people think about their future, it's wide open, like anything could happen. But fate makes it seem more like inevitable, I would imagine, right? Like, you're fated to do this. It's set in stone, And so I think there's a kind of fatalism that runs throughout Vonnegut's work, which, I don't know, in a way, if you take it a little too far, it doesn't leave a lot of room for responsibility. the last essay that we just finished, the Bertrand Russell essay, he seemed to sort of kind of go halfway to Vonnegut. He's like, oh, we live in a universe that we can't control, and we're like powerless, and we're so small in sort of the vast universe, but we have freedom. We have this freedom to construct ideals and to try to pursue those ideals. Well, with Vonnegut, you get the first half, where like, oh yeah, it's meaningless, you can't, but you don't get the second half. You don't get we're free, we can do whatever we want. You see it, once you get through the first 3 chapters, you start to see this pattern that these characters, even though they're told their future, they're told, here's what you're gonna do. And they're like, hell no, I'm not gonna do that. And they like work as hard as they can to like not do what they're told, and they like by working against fate, they inevitably actually fall into it, right? So you'll see like, Malachi and Beatrice here in the first couple chapters, right? They find out what their fate is and they don't like it. And they do everything they can to prevent it from happening. And everything they do actually gets them closer to it. They sort of inevitably fall into this trap. So that, again, it's kind of a recurring theme of Vonnegut. You find in the Slaughterhouse 5 this character of Billy Pilgrim, unstuck in time. Interesting book. Again, this is my favorite of Vonnegut's. I read all his stuff. I think this is his best work, but this is his most celebrated one. And probably because it's a little bit autobiographical, and he was sort of famous for it. Vonnegut himself did live through World War II. He was a veteran, and he was captured by the Germans during World War II. And as a prisoner of war, he witnessed the bombing of Dresden. And that's a part of the book. There's a scene in the book where the main character, he's stuck in Slaughterhouse 5. The Germans put him in an old slaughterhouse that's been abandoned, where they put these war prisoners. And that's the only reason he survived the bombing, because he was in this slaughterhouse and these big coolers, and they survived. But if Dresden was a civilian town. It was not they bombed a bunch of civilians that were shot there. It wasn't like a military base. And so it was one of these atrocities that don't get talked about a lot because it was the Germans and they're evil, so it's okay to kill them. But Dresden was this beautiful city. If you go back, they've kind of rebuilt it. It's got a beautiful art museum, beautiful architecture. It's sort of this crowning jewel of Germany. And so I think Vonnegut, living through that, it really shaped his view of war. And I think there's this anti-war theme that runs throughout all his novels, right? That it's just, there's no good reason for killing each other, pretty much, seems to be his attitude, right? That, he saw this beautiful city just demolished. And we did the same thing. And they did the same thing to London, to be fair, right? The Germans bombed civilians, in London, right? So it was just bad all the way around. There's not much going on here in terms of anti-war with Vonnegut, but we get a lot of exploration of time, right? What is time? What's the nature of time? How do we experience time? And also our fate, right? Our fate in sort of the grand scheme of things. So that's one sort of, theme that runs throughout this novel and pretty much everything he ever wrote. The title of the book is The Sirens of Titan. What is the title in reference to? Even if you didn't do the reading, you might guess. What are sirens? What's a siren? Not like a police siren. It's different. Who are this from Greek mythology? No one's familiar with the siren.
Like the ones that sing?
Kind of. Yeah, they sing. Yeah, they're these sea women that sing. They live on this island. And what happens when you sail by them and they sing?
They hook you,
they draw you in, right? You can't control it. Their song is so beautiful, but what happens when you get close to the island?
It's something terrible.
You die, right? You hit the reef and you die, right? So apparently no one's ever been able to live to hear the siren song, except for Odysseus. If you ever read the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey. In fact, I meant to find that passage to read it, but totally forgot, so sorry, my bad. But there's a passage where Odysseus, he wants to hear the siren song, so he tells all his men on this boat to clog their ears up with wax and tie him to the mast so he can't get free. And he says, don't listen to me, don't say anything, don't take your ears out. I just want to hear the sirens. And so he's like the only one who was able to live. But he wanted to. He was trying to get free to swim to them, and you swim to them, and you said it doesn't work out very good, Titan is one of the moons of Saturn, and how does that fit into the story? Who did the reading? One of our main characters' fate involves Titan. Were y'all too busy working on your essay last night to do any reading, or did y'all forget? What's the deal with Titan? Why is Titan in the title? Well, again, it's one of Saturn's moons. I should have looked this up too. I don't think it's habitable, but it's presented as habitable, that you could live on Saturn's moon. It's actually livable. You could live on Titan. Well, our hero, for lack of a better word, I don't know if you'd call him a hero, he's kind of a sleazebag, but Malachi Constant, that's where he's supposed to be headed eventually. At least that's what he's told at the beginning of the novel. He's gonna end up spending his final days on this planet, or this moon, I guess. Titan, Saturn's moon. But right here, so I've just got the characters that are introduced in the first chapter. I guess you could argue that the Reverend Bobby Denton is kind of a side character. He's not really a big part of the plot, but he kind of figures in through the whole book as kind of a commentator on it. But obviously, Malachi, Beatrice, they're going to be big parts of the plot. Rumford as well. But the book starts off with a kind of omniscient narration. Right? I like this about Vonnegut's books. They're fun to read because he's able to do whatever the hell he wants and experiment. And as far as I can tell, I can't remember another book, maybe Player Piano, like one of his first books. Almost every book he writes in this style where you have this omniscient narrator. What does that mean? An omniscient narration. What's omniscience? No one knows what it means to be omniscient? Like people say God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. Omniscience, no one knows that? It means you know everything. So like whoever wrote this, it doesn't not clear who wrote it, obviously Vonnegut wrote it, but it's presented as like from this future position where we already figured everything out, right? And we're looking back and telling a story, right, from sort of this perspective. A lot of like Victorian literature, if you read like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or something, a lot of times it's told like someone's recalling a story. So that limits what can be said. You can't get into the minds of the characters. You can only get to the mind of one character, the one who's narrating. Everybody else is just sort of like their actions are reported. Whereas Vonnegut kind of like, I know what they're all thinking. Here's what this dude was thinking. Here's what she was thinking. Here, they kind of got, again, he's God basically in the Vonnegut universe. Well, let's read the first few paragraphs here. Wow, I love these like punchy, these like very, very much like Hemingway, where he's got these short sentences, short paragraphs, really quick to read, right? Real punchy. The first chapter, this is, the title is Between Timid and Timbuktu. And they explain you never really understand the title of the chapter until you're almost done with the chapter. You're kind of like, what the heck? You get to close to the end of the chapter. Oh, okay. Who got that far? What's the title a reference to? Between Timid and Timbuktu. Well, apparently if you go into a dictionary, most people don't do that anymore, they just Google the word, right? If you pick up a physical dictionary, every word between timid and Timbuktu refers to time, right? Timid, y'all know what that means, right? What's Timbuktu? No one knows what Timbuktu is. There's an actual place, but it's usually not what you're referring to when you say Timbuktu. It's slang. What does it mean? Yeah.
The middle of nowhere.
Like, yeah, you're middle of nowhere. All right. Between timid and Timbuktu, every word in the dictionary between those words refers to time. Is there a deeper meaning there? Time is between timid and the middle of nowhere. I don't know. All right, well, let's read the first few paragraphs here. Everyone knows how to find the meaning of life within himself. But mankind wasn't always so lucky. Less than a century ago, men and women did not have easy access to the puzzle boxes within them. They could not even name one of the 53 portals to the soul. Gimcrack religions were big business. Mankind, ignorant of the truths that lie within every human being, looked outward, pushed ever outward. What mankind hoped to learn in its outward push was who was actually in charge of all creation and what all creation was all about. Mankind flung its advance agents ever outward, ever outward. Eventually it flung them out into space, into the colorless, tasteless, weightless sea of outwardness without end. It flung them like stones. These unhappy agents found what had already been found in abundance on earth, a nightmare of meaninglessness without end. The bounties of space, of infinite outwardness, were three: empty heroics, low comedy, and pointless death. Outwardness lost at last its imagined attractions. Only inwardness remained to be explored. Only the human soul remained terra incognita. This was the beginning of goodness and wisdom. What were people like in olden times with their souls as yet unexplored? The following is a true story from the nightmare ages, falling roughly, give or take a few years, between the Second World War and the Third Great Depression. Okay, interesting. So it looks like the setting of our story is something like 100 years in the future of whenever the hell you decide to read the book, right? So he's thinking like 2058 or something, 59. We're probably thinking, 100 years from now or something. But what has changed about humans, according to this narrator? What have we figured out? The first line of the book. Yeah, and how do we find it? Within ourselves. We were looking for it out there in space. All right, let's fly out to the cosmos and conquer, the age of exploration. Explore don't leave no stone unturned. And once we know everything there is to know about the world out there, then we'll understand our place and we'll understand why we're here. But for him, whoever's this person is who's narrating, this future citizen of the earth as it is in like this utopian future, right? The beginning of goodness and wisdom, as he puts it. During the nightmare ages that I guess we're still stuck in, after World War II, but before the Third Great Depression, right? So it's right where we're at, right? We've only had one Great Depression. We've got two more to go. Then this happens, right? But all that this leads to, he says, right, the sort of outwardness, this expansion outward, all it leads to, he says, were three bounties of space, of infinite outwardness, and they were this: empty heroics, low comedy, and pointless death. Here's my marker. So. Bounties of infinite outwardness. I love that phrase. All right, the bounties of space, of infinite outwardness, were, what did he say? Empty heroics, low comedy, pointless death. Is this fair? Is that really fair? Is it really fair to say that? Because I don't know. I mean, I'm really asking seriously, because I really kind of agree with him. But I don't want to say it's true, Because think about all the money we put into the space program. Think about how proud people are. Like Buzz Aldrin punched a guy. Like one of those dudes that you know what I'm talking about, the moon. Did you see that video? There's all these guys that deny the moon landing happened. You know, they're like, it's a conspiracy. It was done in a Hollywood studio and all those photos are fake. You know, and the guy went up to Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut who was on the moon, and said, "You're a liar. It was fake." And Buzz Aldrin punched him in the face. Was like, he was an old man too. He was like this, 70-year-old dude, and the guy was a young guy. He's like, oh, boom, knocked him out. It was like, I guess he still has it in him. He still got that astronaut in him, But there's people like, I think I'm in the minority. At least I watch a lot of news. I watch a lot of business shows, and everyone is just so, Elon Musk is so brilliant. Oh, Bezos is so awesome what they're doing, and they're gonna revolutionize. They're gonna bring space to everybody. So what? There's nothing up there. It's just dead rocks. I'm an idiot, I guess. I'm not a scientist nerd. I don't like looking under someone tell me, what are we gonna get out of it? Like, what are we we've been up there, we brought dust back. Wow, we got moon rocks, cool. I'm making myself look stupid. I'm sure some scientist is going to see this on YouTube one day and write a whole freaking essay in the comments section about this moron. I can't believe he's a professor brainwashing the students with this bullshit. But really, I'm asking it seriously because I think we're putting a lot of resources into this stuff, spending billions and billions of dollars that could be used to feed families, to build good, clean water, to teach people how to grow food, and help. But no, I gotta try to do this again. I want to fly up into space and then come back down. I don't get it. Right? I think it's empty heroics. Amazing, cool, impressive. Wow, you did a lot of that's crazy. But that's great math, good engineering. Low comedy. I don't know, what that means in a way. Pointless death, I kind of get. The low comedy part, what's he saying about that? I don't know. I don't think it was that funny, but I guess you could kind of see it in sort of a black humor kind of way, like the stuff that the Soviets and that we did, putting monkeys into space, putting dogs into space and stuff like that. It's just sort of, it's almost humorous. It's like, what are you trying to achieve? But no one has anything? Come on. I'm sure there's gotta be something. Someone do a little research for me, maybe. Try to prove me wrong. Maybe there's some the only thing we got, I think, is this. That's all we got out of the space exploration is our gadgets, satellites, the internet. Being
But then we also realize how vast everything is.
We already kind of knew that, but I think it kind of proved it. It was sort of like our theories had gotten that far. I think you're right, but maybe after exploring and we saw how small we were, it kind of
Well, who's to say that in a whole other dimension far off? Because do you really think because we still don't fully understand how vast space is.
Right.
I feel like we might, at least in our lifetime, we might not. But the amount of space there is in space, do you think that there's only one place that could hold?
There's gotta be.
Chemical.
Yeah, you're getting into the, what is it called? The sort of Goldilocks theory. There's gotta be a Goldilocks planet.
It has to be.
Yeah, given how big the universe is,
Right.
how vast it is, there's gotta be at least one other planet, probably more than one, that has the conditions where life could, yeah. But then it's sort of kind of it's great, but what are you gonna do? You're gonna meet new people. Great, another planet with other things that need food and shelter and to eat and I don't,
Right.
Maybe if you meet them and they're these beings that understand consciousness, we will help you find the key to your soul. How does he put it here? There's 50 pathways or whatever. The 53 portals to the soul. Kind of reminds me of the yoga teachers with the chakras. You got the 7 chakras. Y'all know the chakras? Right? You gotta do your meditation and what is it? The seven, right? You get the top one and you become enlightened or whatever, Kind of sounds like that, But maybe the aliens, you meet them and they're like, you only have 6 senses? Let's explore the other 20, What are you gonna say?
I said that they might be exactly what we are, we won't gain anything from them.
Right. I've heard someone argue, I forgot what scientist was saying it, but they were like, sort of like, all you people with the alien, like, y'all want to meet aliens? He kind of rolled his eyes and he's like, look, I agree with what you just said. It's very likely, it's highly unlikely that there aren't aliens, right? Like, given the size of the universe, there's got to be some other life out there of some sort. But he said, because of the vastness of it, there's really no, at least unless we can learn how to like do some Star Trek stuff where we can like turn our particles into like light and move at like such a fast rate, there's no way we could ever meet each other.
Okay.
Like, we're separated by so much distance that like it would take like 12 generations of people to get like within like contact with someone else. They'd have to like live on a ship for like 100 years and their kids would live for 100 years and their kids would live like 100 years later, then they would get to this new place, you know. And then I heard, I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, who, that guy kind of annoys me, man, but he made a really good point about the aliens. He said something like, all you people that are like wishing and hoping and want the aliens to show up and you're like all excited about the aliens, he's like, be careful what you wish for. He's like, think about it. We don't really have any contact with aliens, but what we do have experience of in history is a society that has more technology meeting a society that has less technology. And it usually doesn't work out very good for the society that has less technology. They usually get conquered, destroyed, genocide. It's not really good usually. So if some aliens are good enough to have a spaceship to fly, to our planet, yeah, they're gonna be way like more powerful. Like we probably don't want them to notice us. We want them to fly by like we're some ant hill, like, oh, where are those little ants down there? Keep going, that's what we want them to do, which they might, right? Like they might, if they're that evolved, their relationship to us genetically might be, I think this is also Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's saying that like our genetic relation to like chimpanzees is like 98% or something. It's like so close. It's just like 1% difference. But like you can't talk to a chimpanzee. You can't communicate with a chimpanzee. You can't. So imagine like aliens that are 98% and they're like 1 or 2% different, but they're like on this other level of, they won't even.
Different brands. It's the same tree, different brands.
Right. They won't even know how to talk. We won't even understand them, right? And we won't have a language to sort of bridge the gap. So, my sort of attitude about that is like, I just hope they're benevolent aliens, I hope they're good, like the nice aliens or whatever, But like actively going out looking for them or spending millions and billions of dollars and resources to learn how to fly up into space. It's one thing if you have an aim, but it doesn't seem like they have an aim. Like they'll say, well, we want to get to Mars by like this year. But what are you gonna do when you get there? Like Bezos, I think, I saw him in some interview. He's like, I don't know what to do. Like, all I can think of is go to Mars. Like, I know what to do. Feed children that are starving. Fix neighborhoods that are like, deteriorated. I know it's not some sexy sci-fi wet dream you had when you were some teenage nerd watching Star Trek, but it's what we need, He's like, I think all I can think of as an innovator is go to Mars, And when you get there, what? Build a fulfillment center or some crap, That's what I'm thinking. Like when I'm some old rickety old man, there's gonna be some Amazon fulfillment center on Mars, and every time you order Amazon, some gun's gonna aim at Earth, right? And just shoot a little drone at your house, So they don't have to hire anybody. Robots can do it from Mars or something. I don't know, But it doesn't seem like they have a goal. I'm just gonna do it to show off, basically, because I can, because I'm big rich dude, Look how cool I am. Maybe they're doing something really that we just can't know about, because they all have contracts with the Pentagon. Maybe they do have some actual goal, but from the outside looking in, it seems like they're just doing it to show off. Like, I'm not a scientist. Someone, if y'all have some sciencey friends, maybe y'all should discuss this with them today and come back to me with some, I'm sure there must be something maybe, they've on that International Space Station, I know they do all sorts of scientific experiments. Maybe they've discovered cures for diseases, or they've discovered something about physics. Like, I don't know, there's gotta be something practical. I'm hoping I'm wrong here. I'm hoping he's wrong here. But from the outside looking in, at least when it comes to finding meaning and purpose, it's kind of like, what's the why? Like, you're just going, I guess, again, if you're a science nerd who gets off on like finding something out about a new particle, then yeah. But if you're just some person trying to live their life, it's kind of like, I don't get it. I don't understand the big fuss, So instead of going outward, he's inwardness, right? Looking in, how many did he say? 52 portals? Yeah, something like that. The 53 portals to the soul. So where does this begin, right? This is, again, the time period is after World War II, but before the Third Great Depression. That makes it pretty broad. I like how he wrote that, because that kind of like allows you to write a book in 1959 and still talk about the future, and it doesn't completely get outdated. There's some stuff in here that's pretty outdated, like they use phones, like actual phones, and things like that. So you're kind of like, that's not the future, you know. But some of it's still held up, right? Some of, like, he's got floating chairs and things like that in his office. That's still, I haven't seen that yet. Have you? Floating chairs? Yeah, me neither. I want floating chairs and of course they don't work very well. It's in chapter 2, y'all probably didn't get that far yet. Yeah, Malachi Constant goes to his office. He's got, his office is floating around. He's kind of pissed off though, because they just installed it. He's not used to it. So it's like, what the hell's up with this furniture? So where are we, right? We're in, it says on page 3, Newport, Rhode Island, USA, Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, right? The Rumford Estate, right? We're at this big mansion, okay? 10 minutes before the materialization was to take place, agents of the police spread the rumor that the materialization had happened prematurely, had happened outside the walls, and that the man and his dog could be seen plain as day 2 blocks away. The crowd galloped away to see the miracle at the intersection. The crowd was crazy about miracles. So we're at this mansion in Rhode Island. There's a big crowd outside. They're waiting for a man to materialize with a dog. Who's the man? Which of these characters? You guys need to do the reading, man. But you need to do the reading. It's the Rumford Estate. So who's going to show up? Which man is going to show up at the Rumford Estate? Winston Niles Rumford and his dog Kazak. I think that's how you say it. Kazak. His poor dog. He's going to materialize. Gesundheit. The materializations had been happening for 9 years, over every 59 days, or once every 59 days. The most learned and trustworthy men in the world had begged heartbrokenly for the privilege of seeing a materialization. No matter how the great men worded their requests, they were turned down cold. The refusal was always the same, handwritten by Mrs. Rumford's social secretary. Mrs. Winston Niles Rumford asked me to inform you that she is unable to extend the invitation per your request. She is sure you will understand her feeling in the matter, that the phenomenon you wish to observe is a tragic family affair, hardly a fit subject for the scrutiny of outsiders, no matter how nobly motivated their curiosities. So her husband, right, Winston Niles Rumford, and her husband's dog materialize every 59 days at the mansion, right? And then they disappear again. What's going on? And everyone thinks this is like some crazy miracle, right? Like this guy's got to be the next coming of Jesus or something. Remember at the beginning of the book, he mentions that this is a century when men didn't have easy access to the puzzle boxes within them. He says Jim crack religions were big business. What's a Jim crack religion? That's an old expression. No one says Jim crack anymore. Jim crack religion. What's that? Could you guess by what it sounds like? Jim crack. Well, kind of like a scam, basically. Yeah, like someone just made it up to just screw you over and take advantage of you, right? Just so, made for gullible people to just fall prey to, right? And so you've got always this crowd outside. They think that this guy's, what's going on? He disappears and then he shows up again every 59 days. He just poof, he's there, and then poof, he's gone. Now the crowd had been decoyed away from the estate to permit the untroubled arrival of a rented limousine at the small iron door in the west wall. So the cops tell the crowd, oh, we saw the guy 2 blocks away. So they run away, and now this limousine pulls up. A slender man in the clothes of an Edwardian dandy got out of the limousine. So he's some rich bougie guy, right? Showed a paper to the policeman guarding the door. He was disguised by dark glasses and a false beard. The policeman nodded and the man unlocked the door himself with a key from his pocket. He ducked inside and slammed the door behind himself with a clang. The limousine drew away. "Beware of the dog," said a sign over the small iron door. The fires of the summer sunset flickered among the razors and needles of broken glass, set in concrete on top of the wall. The man who had let himself in was the first person ever invited by Mrs. Rumford to a materialization. He was not a great scientist. He was not even well educated. He had been thrown out of the University of Virginia in the middle of his freshman year. He was Malachi Constant of Hollywood, California, the richest American, and a notorious rake-hell. That's just kind of just a sleazy, party animal, notorious, that sort of thing. So what's he there for? And I'm gonna start having to give you guys a quiz on this shit, because y'all either really shy or you just didn't do the reading. Why is Malachi Constant there? He's the richest man in America. I kind of gave it away already. What's his fate? He's gonna be told something, right? That Winston told his wife, "I want this guy here next time. Invite him. I've got something to tell him." What's he gonna tell him? You're gonna die on where are you gonna go?
Titan.
Yeah, you're gonna go to Titan. Okay. You're gonna end up on Titan. He's like, Triton? He's like, no, Titan, not Triton. Titan. It's the moon of Saturn. What's up with this guy? Why is he materializing? He's stuck. He's kind of like the character in Slaughterhouse 5, who's unstuck in time. He's in a similar predicament. Rumford, right, Winston Rumford here, is stuck in what Vonnegut refers to as the chronosynclastic infundibula. Learn that crazy word, because he says it a lot. That comes up a lot. I don't think I can even say it now. I'm trying to, what is it? Chronosynclastic infundibula? Yeah, okay, I got it. Chronosynclastic infundibula. What the heck is the chronosynclastic infundibula? Well, you get a brief explanation here on page 8, right? This is from A Child's Cyclopedia of Wonders and Things to Do. And this is some fictitious book that Vonnegut invents. The article is pre-produced in full with gracious permission from the publishers. So, a chronosynclastic infundibula. And here it goes. Just imagine that your daddy is the smartest man who ever lived on Earth. And he knows everything there is to find out. And he is exactly right about everything. And he can prove he is right about everything. Now imagine another little child on some nice world a million light years away. And that little child's daddy is the smartest man who ever lived on that nice world so far away. And he is just as smart and just as right as your daddy is. Both daddies are smart. And both daddies are right. Only if they ever met each other, they would get into a terrible argument because they wouldn't agree on anything. Now you can say that your daddy is right and the other little child's daddy is wrong, but the universe is an awfully big place. There's room enough for an awful lot of people to be right about things and still not agree. The reason both daddies can be right and still get into terrible fights is because there are so many different ways of being right. There are places in the universe, though, where each daddy could finally catch on to what the other daddy was talking about. These places are where all different kinds of truths fit together as nicely as the parts in your daddy's solar watch. We call these places chronosynclastic infundibula. The solar system seems to be full of chronosynclastic infundibula. There's one great big one we are sure of that likes to stay between Earth and Mars. We know about that one because an Earthman and his Earth dog ran right into it. You might think it would be nice to go to a chronosynclastic infundibulum and see all the different ways to be absolutely right, but it is a very dangerous thing to do. The poor man and his poor dog are scattered far and wide, not just through space, but through time too. Chrono means time. Synclastic means curved towards the same side in all directions, like the skin of an orange. Infundibulum is what the ancient Romans like Julius Caesar and Nero called a funnel. If you don't know what a funnel is, get your mommy to show you one. Bad joke. But anyway, so he's in this thing, right, where all the smart daddies can agree from all over the universe. This is interesting. This is sort of it reminds me a bit of Nietzsche. I keep bringing up Mr. Nietzsche, so let me put his name up here on the board. We already covered subjectivism briefly in this class. I mentioned that, and the people who wrote the intro to that Russell essay mentioned subjectivism. Bertrand Russell, later in his life, he turns to a kind of subjectivist philosophy with regards to ethics. Can someone remind me, what is subjectivism? Someone had it in this class, I think. Maybe she's not here today. So truth is variable. Like there's no objective standard about what's right or wrong. It's all subjective. It all depends on one's personal preferences. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. Nietzsche, the German philosopher, he's often, I forgot my S, okay. Nietzsche's often considered a subjectivist, or at the very least some sort of relativist. Relativism in morality, right? Relativism it's like a more general term. Subjectivism is more specific. Like I guess you could say subjectivism is a type of relativism. It says, morals are relative. They're relative to the person, to the subjectivity, to the individual. You also have versions of relativism like cultural relativism. It says, well, ethics depend on your culture, what city or country or culture you're from, whatever. What we're getting here in the book with Vonnegut, with this sort of chronosynclastic infundibulum, it's not really relativism as much as it's kind of like almost like Einstein's relativity. It's not that there isn't truth out there, right? I guess if you're a subjectivist, you would say there really isn't objective truth, at least when it comes to morality. You might think there's objective truth when it comes to other things like mathematics or science. But you're going to say, well, when it comes to our moral values, each individual, like let's just put a bunch of I's here for the individual, right? All these individuals, they have a sense of identity, they have a sense of self, and they each come up with their own version of true and false, good and bad, etc. Right? All these sort of worldviews, all these conceptions of reality, and they're all individual. They're all subjective. There really is no absolute truth. Now, some of these views might be similar. You might have two individuals who have very similar worldviews, so they overlap a little bit. But there is no ultimate standard of correctness. Nietzsche, I think, is wrongly characterized as a subjectivist in this sense. But I think that Nietzsche and Vonnegut are kind of on the same page here, at least the way that Vonnegut is presenting us with this notion of the chronosynclastic infundibula. The idea is, look, there's truth out there, there's reality, but there's a lot of ways of seeing it. So let's put all our individuals up here, right? So I've got maybe this is my daddy on Earth, and let's say he's the smartest daddy in the world, and he's seeing the world from Earth. But if I'm, the daddy of person B or whatever in the story, and I'm from another planet a million light years away, I'm seeing the truth from a different angle. So it's not that truth is subjective, it's just that none of us has a full grasp of all of it. There's no God's eye view where we can see all the angles at once. Now, Nietzsche, in his writings, tended to focus on psychological and what he would consider physiological biases that we have. So I will have a bias, a psychological bias, because of the way I think, the way I view myself. I'll have a psychological bias to view the world a certain way and to label people a certain way, to see them as threatening or non-threatening, to see them as, you know, good or bad, etc. And a lot of this has to do with my psychology, but even deeper than that, he thought was my physiology. What's my physiology? What's your physiology? What does that mean? Physics. Well, okay, well, we would say genetics, but he's writing the 1800s, so he didn't have genetics. But yeah, your physical makeup, right? What are you made of? You know, what kind of body type do you have? That sort of thing. He thought that had a big impact on your worldview. And so in his book, The Genealogy of Morals, he talks about these two, the dynamic between these two animals, right? The birds of prey, these eagles, these hawks, and these little baby lambs, these cute little fluffy lambs. And he says, you know, imagine if you could talk to these animals, what they would say about each other, right? If you went to the little baby lambs and you talked to them about the eagles, and what would they say? And he says, oh, the eagles, they're evil, right? That's what the lambs would say. Look how evil they are. They're so scary. There's like no life in their eyes. Their eyes are like cold and black, and they have these sharp beaks that they come down, they swoop and claw at us with their sharp, razor-sharp claws, and they carry off our young, and they devour them up in their nests. They're frightening. They're demonic. They're evil. And Nietzsche's like, well, you know, there's nothing wrong with the lambs thinking that way. I mean, if I was a little soft, fluffy lamb, I would probably feel that way about the eagles. And it's true, they are scary from that perspective. Let's go talk to the eagles and see what they think about the lambs, right? And then you go talk to the eagles and they're like, the lambs don't like us? We got nothing against them. We love them, they're cool. We like lamb, why they don't like us? They're cute, they're fluffy, they're tasty and tender and delicious. We love a baby lamb. Yeah, and so Nietzsche's like, to expect an eagle to see the world through the eyes of a lamb or vice versa is stupid, right? That they have a certain physiology or physicality that makes them see the world a certain way. And we do too, right? All of us. This seems kind of like, well, how does my physique, how does my body have anything to do with the way I see the world? You know, I had a couple neighbors when I was growing up. They had these dogs. One was a Chihuahua and one was a German Shepherd. And who do you think was the boss? Chihuahua, right? That little baby had to have this sort of Napoleonic complex, right? Had to sort of like stand up for itself because of its lack of size. Still using animal examples. How does this apply to humans? Yeah, how do you, like, what do you mean by that though? Well, like Black Lives Matter, like how might that look? So your perspective, so are you saying like maybe like, okay, if you grew up in a neighborhood where you're predominantly black neighborhood, you might have a different perspective on police? Is that kind of, or?
Yeah, that applies to, I just feel like black people themselves have like, my brain just.
Well, I don't know. I get what your point. So, like, if you're a black person in America, you're gonna see things a little bit differently because of
white people or like.
Right. I think women and men too, right? So, like, you know, if I like, let's say I'm in a bad neighborhood at night. You know, I know I'm like, oh crap, I shouldn't be in this neighborhood. You know, I might be kind of scared. I'm like, oh crap, I might get mugged, I might get robbed or something. But I'm not thinking I might get raped. Right. That doesn't that doesn't. But a girl might like, oh, it's crap. Like that's another extra thing she's gonna have to worry about that would never cross my mind. And there's might be other things too, where guys would worry where women wouldn't, and things like that. Right. So there's sort of different things inhabiting a certain type of a body. I thought of an example. I used to use this, kind of controversial, I guess, but there was a show. I forgot the name of the show, but. It was one of those reality shows. My roommates were watching it one day, and I had to sit down and kind of watch it too because it was to me interesting. They took these beautiful women. They were like swimsuit models, I think, like what is it, the tanning stuff, sun, whatever the heck, Hawaiian, I forgot the name of the brand, but they were all like suntan models, like bikini models, you know. They made them dress up like they were very big. Like, I don't know if you all saw that movie, I never saw the movie, but I saw the previews and that's enough. But Shallow Hal, you seen Shallow Hal? It's a pretty old movie, I think, 10 years or so. But they take Gwyneth Paltrow, who's like very thin, and they make her look like she's like 300 pounds or something, right? And so they did this with these women who were, you know, these beautiful women. They're usually like, probably everywhere they go, guys just won't leave them the hell alone. They're always being, you know, they made them dress up like they were overweight and obese, and then they went out just to do regular stuff. Like they went shopping, they like made them go to like do their laundry, the laundromat. And every one of them, they probably picked the ones that did this. Maybe not all of them did this, but like the ones that were on the show all cried. They all started like crying. They were freaking out. They were like, why are people so mean? Like they were, I guess they were used to people being very nice to them, and you know, they never noticed it. They just took it for granted. You know, I used to see this working in restaurants, you know. I never did it because I thought it was stupid. I was like, you think some girl's gonna want to date you because you gave her free cheesecake? Like, you know, I remember as a waiter, you know, whenever I had like some attractive woman at my table, you know, I'd go back to the kitchen and all the dudes in the back are like, oh, dude, that's your table, man. Hey, see if she wants some free dessert, man. And I'm like, dude, I don't think she's gonna be like, oh, that sweaty guy in the hairnet gave me free cheesecake? Oh, okay, I'll go on a date with him. You know, like, it's not gonna work, you know? But, you know, that kind of stuff happens, and a lot of times you don't realize it. You know, I guess you don't see it because you haven't, you know, you don't know the privilege that you get from having the good looks, I guess. Like, other stuff might annoy you, I guess. Like, if you're really attractive, you probably, you know, I know it sucks if people are always hitting on you. And it's just like, just leave me alone. I just want to teach my philosophy class, and I know I'm handsome and all. God, just control yourself, you know? So I just want to be left alone, you know? Love me for my soul, not just my body, you know? It gets old after a while, you know? But, like, you know, again, if you're not, then you might be thinking, geez, I wish people would bother me more or whatever. So you've got a completely different perspective. There's an issue that a lot of philosophers have debated forever, right, about human nature, right? Are humans good by nature? Or are they evil by nature, right? Some think that we're selfish, right? Like Thomas Hobbes, you know, everyone's selfish. You have to kind of be taught not to be selfish. Your sort of instinct is just to do what's best for you and not care about other people. And then other philosophers sort of argue that no, humans are good, we want to help, and you get corrupted by society, and that's how you go bad. You know, I think that if you were a person like I just described, where maybe you're very attractive and everybody's helping you, you might lend to you believing that philosophy that human nature is good, right? You know, people are just really nice. Every time my car breaks down, like someone stops to help me and switch my tire for me, and you know, people are always offering free stuff to me all the time. I get like deals, like free stuff in the drive-thru. People are just so nice, you know. But like, imagine you're the Elephant Man. Yeah, y'all know the Elephant Man?
Yeah.
Really sad, right? That movie, they made a movie about the guy. He had elephantitis. His face was so deformed, he couldn't sleep laying down. He had to sleep upright because he couldn't breathe. And his face was so deformed and so big, he couldn't walk in public because he had to cover his face because women would scream and run. And, you know, they'd be like, oh, it's a monster. You know, I mean, imagine what he thought about humans and human nature, right? There's a scene in that movie that just like there's this a doctor who sees, because he's a circus freak, basically. People spend money to see him. And this doctor goes to see him and just starts crying. And it's like, how can they treat this man so horribly? And he buys the guy. He buys them from the circus. He buys him out of his contract and takes him. He's a doctor, and he tries to, there's a scene where the doctor is trying to help him speak because his jaw is malformed, so it's hard for him to talk. So he's always like slurping, like, you know, he's got this weird talk. And so the doctor's kind of coaching him, being really nice, and he starts crying. The Elephant Man guy starts crying. I think his name was John Merrick, was the real guy's name. And the doctor was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be offensive. I didn't mean, did I say something? He's like, no, I've just never been treated with respect. I've never been treated like a human being, you know? It's like, God dang. Like, imagine being that guy. There's like, I think, a funnier version of the same point in, what is it, H.P. Lovecraft. What is the name of the story? I think it's called The Outsider. It's a story of a monster who doesn't know he's a monster. And like, it's weird because he's like, I don't remember my mom. It's kind of a faint memory because it was hundreds of years ago. I just remember her being nice and caring, and I just live in this dark cave. And every once in a while I go out, but I don't like to go out because people are just, they're paranoid, you know? I walk down the street and people scream and run. What's their deal? They need to chill the hell out. And then at the end of the story, he like finds a mirror and he looks in the mirror and he's like, what the hell is that? He's like, oh, that's me? No wonder people are like freaking the hell out. So it's like he wasn't aware. Like he didn't have, I guess what you might call like social awareness, right? But I think some people completely lack that social awareness and they don't realize how other people affect them and how they affect other people. And then there's maybe the flip side where people are like hyper socially aware and they're so concerned with the way people think about them that they're almost artificial, right? They're kind of putting on some sort of act or whatnot. But the idea though that, you know, for Nietzsche is that we all have a unique relationship to truth, and we can never get at a full unbiased, right? The eagles are always going to see the lambs as tasty and yummy and delicious, and the lambs are going to see the eagles as evil and demonic and scary, because of course you would. If you had that physiology, you had the physique, right? You know, again, maybe if you're a beautiful woman, you're going to see the world a different way because everyone's so nice to you. People must be so nice. If you're Elephant Man, you're like, God, people are crummy and they're jerks, and you see the worst side of people. You were talking about Black Lives Matter. I'm kind of like, as much as I've had my issues with the law in the past, I kind of sympathize with police to a certain extent because they have to deal with crappy people. Like, you're not dealing with people at their best, right? Like, you're dealing with people when they kind of hit their worst usually. And so if you do that enough, you start to think everyone's this way. You get kind of jaded. I almost think that one solution would be to have a term limit on cops. Like, you can only be a cop for like 5 years and you gotta take a break. Or maybe like you only get to work the beat for a certain amount, then they gotta take you away from people. Cause it's like, I think, you know, you work in the prison system, you work with criminals, it's like you start to just see them all as, you know, and you get jaded and you get, you know, I guess, the system doesn't work, so why even try? And you get this sort of apathetic attitude. So it's so complicated, that issue. It really is. You know, it's rough. But I think though with Vonnegut, he's got a similar notion here, right? You've got, you know, there are ways of being right. There are different ways of being right. And there's no way, again, like if you're somebody from this perspective, you know, trying to talk to somebody over here, you're never going to be able to agree. Right? If you're an eagle trying to talk to the lamb, you're never going to see eye to eye. You're looking at a different world, basically, right? You have a different relationship to truth. To me, that's not relativism, though. That's different than relativism. Relativism is the idea that there is no truth. You know, all there is our opinions and our beliefs. This is, I think, is a little more solid. Yeah, there's truth out there. There's no way to get a full perspective of it, to see it all from every angle, unless you are in some science fiction novel and you run into the chronosynclastic infundibula, right? Like he does. And it's actually not a good place to be, as you see. It sucks. Because this guy is basically spends his whole life between Earth and Mars, materializing every 59 days in different spots, you know? And so imagine what a nightmare that would be. His poor dog too, right? I love what does he say when the dog disappears? I forgot the exact wording, but he says it was like a ping pong ball in a frying pan or something like that. Like, I could totally picture that. I knew exactly what he was thinking. I was like, ping pong ball in a frying pan. Like the dog just turned into like this little white, you know, and just like zapped into nothingness, you know, or whatever. Yeah. Well, become material, become like physical. So it's like there's just a bunch of air there. Just that you've seen Star Trek, right? You know, whenever they beam me up, right? They basically become translucent. They disappear and then they're gone. The way he describes it here, though, it sounds like they like turn into like some sort of bunch of particles, and then they get smaller and smaller and more compressed, and then turns into like just nothingness, and then they're gone. Yeah, it's like transportation, basically. Like he's physically being transported. Exactly. Yeah. So, what do we know about this Malachi Constant. Again, he's very rich. He's the richest man in America at the time. And he's been invited to the Rumford estate to be told that he's going to Titan. And not only that, what else is he told? A lot of other stuff that's not really, he doesn't really like to hear. What does his name mean, too? All these names have meaning. This is on page 11. His name meant faithful messenger. Malachi Constant. Right? Constant is faithful, Malachi, messenger. And faithful messenger. He was a speculator, mostly in corporate securities. He's a Wall Street man. In the Depressions, that always followed his taking of alcohol, narcotics, and women. Constant pined for just one thing. A single message that was sufficiently dignified and important to merit his carrying it out humbly between 2 points. So he had a dream. I kind of missed that. I didn't really catch that when I was reading it. He wanted this. He's like, my name means constant messenger. I live this life of debauchery, basically, right? All he does is sleep with women, get drunk, do drugs. That's all he does. He's a disgrace to his family name. And he's happy about being a disgrace to his family name. I don't care about anything. I'm just gonna get drunk and be a buffoon and be rich while I do it. Screw everybody, right? Sort of the, I guess that, who's that rich dude? The British guy, the Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson's kind of that style, right? He's like, I'm gonna get on a jet ski with a supermodel on my piggyback or whatever, just because I'm rich, just to show it off, right? But he's like, but man, I want to be a faithful messenger, right? Well, he's gonna get his opportunity. The motto under the coat of arms that Constant had designed for himself said simply, the messenger awaits. What Constant had in mind, presumably, was the first-class message from God to someone equally distinguished. This is another theme I think that runs throughout the book. All these characters are looking for something grand, some grander meaning. Disappointment comes, right? Constant looked at his solar watch again. Okay, yeah, I skipped that part, but he has a solar-powered watch. It's one of the companies he invested in. He had 2 minutes in which to climb down and reach the house, 2 minutes before Kazak, that's the dog, would materialize and look for strangers to bite. Constant laughed to himself, thinking how delighted Mrs. Rumford would be were the vulgar parvenu Mr. Constant of Hollywood to spend his entire visit treed on the fountain by a thoroughbred dog, right? So I skipped that part. He climbs up this fountain. And I'm not sure, that fountain might symbolize something. I'm not quite sure. You know, if you any literature majors or English majors in here want to ponder that for a while. But that fountain comes up a few times in the book. Also the zodiac sign that's in the forum comes up a bit. I don't know if there's any symbolism behind that. The fountain, though, is one of these multi-layered fountains, right? It's like a bowl on top of a bowl on top of a bowl, each one getting smaller like a pyramid. And so he's climbed to the top of it. So he's just sort of, he's not really taking this serious, I think, is the idea. He's just sort of like, yeah, I'm gonna take my time, I'm gonna fart around in the yard, climb up this fountain, get a better view of the whole estate. The Rumford Mansion was marble, an extended reproduction of the banqueting hall of Whitehall Palace in London. The mansion, like most of the really grand ones in Newport, was a collateral relative of post offices and federal court buildings throughout the land, right? So the sort of Greek pillars, the white marble, all that sort of stuff. The mansion was hilariously impressive. It was an impression of the concept, people of substance. It was surely one of the greatest essays on density since the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Skipping forward. Constant climbed down from the fountain, stepping onto the rims of the bowls of ever-increasing sizes. When he got to the bottom, he was filled with a strong wish to see the fountain go. So it's a dry fountain, it's not going. He thought of the crowd outside, thought of how they too would enjoy seeing the fountain go. They would be enthralled watching the teeny-weeny bowl at the tippy-tippy top brimming over into the next little bowl. So again, what's he doing here, right? He shows up. And then not Niles Rumford, right? He materialized only a minute before, comes in the force, stood on the sun, right? This big zodiac that's on the foyer. And then there's this sort of comparison between Rumford and Constant, right? Rumford is kind of this dignified, sort of, I guess you could argue, if you ever read The Great Gatsby, Rumford is kind of old money, and Constant is new money, I guess is the idea. So he's a part of the American aristocracy. They know how to be rich in style. They know how to buy the right mansion, to have the right kind of parties with class, right? This guy's just some charlatan, right? So there's a few pages where we get this sort of comparison. There's a painting, too, that Constant looks at. I'm skipping forward to the bottom of page 17. He now turned his broad back to Constant, led way through a series of very grand chambers. He paused in one, insisted that Constant admire a huge oil painting of a little girl holding the reins of a pure white pony. The little girl wore a white bonnet, a white starched dress, white gloves, white socks, and white shoes. She was the cleanest, most frozen little girl that Malachi Constant had ever seen. There was a strange expression on her face, and Constant decided that she was worried about getting the least bit dirty. Nice picture, said Constant. Wouldn't it be too bad if she fell into the mud puddle, said Rumford. Constant smiled uncertainly. So it's like he's reading his mind, right? He's looking at this painting of this little girl. And what's the deal in the painting? Who is the little girl? Another question for the class. That no one did the reading, damn it. Who's the little girl? Who's the only other character? Who's the only female character? It's Beatrice as a little girl, right? It's Rumford's wife, Beatrice, okay? I think this is kind of revealing a bit about her character, too. You're going to see this. This is sort of how she is. What would a painting reveal about her character? Well, what's in the painting? It's a little girl holding the reins of a pure white pony. She wore a white bonnet, a white starched dress, white gloves, white socks, white shoes. She was the cleanest, most frozen little girl that Malachi Constant had ever seen. There was a strange expression on her face, and Constant decided that she was worried about getting the least bit dirty. What's the symbolism in that? She's very, I'm pure. Got white gloves, a pure white pony. I'm innocent, right? And what is she told by Rumford? Well, we're almost out of time, so I guess I'll just have to spoil it for you. She's basically told, well, her husband really won't tell her shit, right? He's being kind of a dick about it. It's not until chapter 2 that he kind of spits it out. But he tells Constant, you're going to go to Mars, Constant. Then you're going to go back, then you're going to go to Mercury, then you're going to come back to Earth, and then you're going to go to Titan. And in between that, you're going to have sex with my wife, and you're going to have a kid with her, named Chrono. And you're all going to live the rest of your days on Titan. He's like, what the hell? Yeah, sure, dude, whatever. Have fun. Yeah, you're going to materialize and, dematerialize in a few seconds, and you'll be gone, right? But yeah, they hear this and they're like, no, we're not. I'm not going to Mercury and Titan and whatever, Mars. Not doing this. And of course she's disgusted by this guy, right? She won't even, in this whole first chapter, she's like outside the room, kind of like, I don't want to be around him. And after Rumford leaves, she asks the butler, she's like, are they gone? Or is Rumford gone? He's like, yeah. Is he gone? Is Malachi Constant gone too? He's like, I'm still here. It's like, she hates this guy. And he actually, you'll see in chapter 2, he starts writing her letters like they're really offensive to like make her hate him. He's like, we're definitely not breeding. I'm not breeding with that woman, So Rumford shows Malachi Constant a photograph though, because Constant is like, he's kind of teasing Constant. He says, there's very beautiful women on Titan. He's like, you think I care about beautiful women? I've been with Miss Universe. I've been with this. And he pulls a picture out of this Hollywood starlet who he's currently sleeping with. He says, see this woman right here, right? And Rumford says, oh, she's really pretty. Yeah. And he gives him the photo back. He notices there's another photo under the photo that he gave him. And let me find that passage, because I think it's very poetic the way he puts it. He sees a picture of these three women, the Sirens of Titan. Where's this at? All right, he said, this is on page 33. Rumford made no move to take the photograph, because he was going to try to hand it back to him. He didn't even bother to look at it. He looked instead into Constance's eyes and grinned roguishly. Constant looked down at the photograph that had been ignored. He found that it was not a photograph of Miss Canalzone's predecessor. Because that's what he was thinking. He's like, did I give him did I have my last girlfriend in that stack? I thought I might give him one photo. He gets two back. He's like, oh, maybe I showed him the other hot chick. Let me show you the other girl I was with before. But then it was a photograph that Rumford had slipped him. It was no ordinary photograph, though its surface was glossy and its margins were white. Within the margins lay shimmering depths. The effect was much like that of a rectangular glass window in the surface of a clear, shallow coral bay. At the bottom of that seeming coral bay were three women, one white, one gold, one brown. They looked up at Constant, begging him to come to them, to make them whole with love. Their beauty was to the beauty of Miss Canalzone as the glory of the sun was to the glory of a lightning bug. Constant sank into a wing chair again. He had to look away from all that beauty in order to keep from bursting into tears. Right, so yeah, he's like, whoa, that's like, I thought I'd seen beauty, but that was, wow. But he still doesn't want to go. He still doesn't want to go. He's like, I'm not going to go. I'm going to do everything I can to prevent myself from going. So he parties for 59 days and wakes up with a really bad hangover and a really obnoxious wife. So that's chapter 2. So read chapter 2, read chapter 3. A few more things I want to say about chapter 1. Do the reading, because I don't want to be doing all the talking next time.